Do y'all think that the better team won, or was this just a bad game?
They got a cloud hanging over their head.
You execute when you're supposed to execute, and we didn't do that. They were the better team in that game.
Well, a close call at Saban Field, a lopsided Red River Rivalry, and a shocking finish in Death Valley were just a few of the headlines from last week. We'll talk about those and the other games. And we also have a first on the show tonight. We have our first LSU fan on Pigskins and Pageantry, and we're excited to get to that interview and next week's predictions beyond that. But first, welcome back, Jesse. How was your time away?
It was very busy. Thank you for carrying on in my absence. I did not avoid the podcast just because we lost to Vanderbilt. I legitimately had to work for 2 weeks. So before everybody thinks that I decided to skip out, I did not. I was unwell, but I did not skip out because of that. And turns out I'm still unwell. We'll get there.
It really was a missed opportunity, and I don't. It's not like rubbing salt in the wound, but I just know that you would have had like a whole dissertation on what went wrong, and with probably like diagrams of who didn't do what, because I know you were all in on, probably figuring out what the shortcomings were in that game.
I was, but I think I yelled the most at the end when I saw Malachi Moore's behavior.
Oh, yes.
I screamed
we talked about that
so much. My boyfriend came up the stairs because he was like letting someone in the door. He was like, "Is everything okay? Like, you knew you were going to lose." And I was like, "It's not about that. It's about the way that our players are losing, that I am horrified, embarrassed, and honestly just mad." So I truly commend Vandy, and I've been telling everybody since then, I hope they win the rest of their schedule. I hope they beat everybody out.
Let's calm down while that kind of talk.
And this sounds weird to say, but I'm kind of glad that they're not on Georgia's schedule this year.
Right?
I'm a little worried.
Weird things are happening. I digress. I know we're past it, but and I will say this, and this sounds super salty, and people are going to come for me in the comments, and that's totally fine. But being a Bama fan from Georgia, I would have rather lost to Vandy than to Georgia.
I get that. Matt, how are you doing, my friend?
Aside from the palpitations that overtime brings, I'm doing pretty good. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how in the world Tennessee managed to find a way to win that game this weekend. We'll discuss. But man, what a weekend for football, huh? It was a humdinger of a good time
on any given Saturday.
Yeah, and it's
true, and especially now.
It's interesting to see the parity that we've got going on in the SEC, because if you look across the board, nobody looks lights out, with the exception of Texas, and we're going to talk about that too.
I was talking about this real quick before we get into the games, just since we're discussing it now. I was talking about this last night on Cody's show on Twitter, the Texas fan who joined our podcast. We were talking about the parity in the sport right now, and how honestly there's so many teams, look across the board, so many teams whose fans are dissatisfied because they're not dominating the way that they think they should be. I mean, Jesse, I know you feel that way. I feel that way about Georgia. And I know there's got to be others that are slipping my mind right now, but really
there's
across
a whole bunch of people on Vol Twitter right now that
Ole Miss right now, especially after last week. Tennessee fans, of course. Yeah, that's, I don't know how I forgot about that, because they're kind of vocal right now.
Probably Arkansas and Vandy.
Yeah, in
Texas.
In Texas.
I mean, Texas. Texas is
like people that had no expectations.
Everybody else is full of hate and discontent.
In Arkansas. Happy as little clams.
Yep. So let's talk about some of those games from last week.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
All right, well, first let's talk about South Carolina at number 7, Alabama. Bama winning this one 27-25. Jesse gets the point here. I said last week on the Talkin' Bama show and our show as well that I would be concerned. I was holding off on being concerned about Bama But I would be concerned about Bama if they came out and just let South Carolina hang around in this game. Not only did they let them hang around, I mean, they legit had a chance of winning this one, South Carolina did. So I think after last week's upset by Vandy, every team now believes that they have a chance to beat Bama. And, sometimes that's half the battle. I think that showed with South Carolina. Plus, I believe that the combo of Sellers and Sanders on offense for South Carolina is better than what we've seen so far this year. I would have liked to have seen a little more of a methodical drive by them at the end there after the onside kick recovery, which was just wild in and of itself. But
God.
Bama
That was
survives.
such a good onside kick, though.
It
Wow, that
such
was a great onside kick.
But Bama survives, and in terms of staying in the playoff hunt, that's all that matters, right, Jesse?
No, no.
Okay, what do you got then?
I have so many feelings on this. I think most Bama fans were in the camp of, okay, Vanderbilt was a trap game. Pavia was insane. That offense was wild. It's not what we expected from a Vanderbilt, and it's not something that we see very often in the SEC. Fine. That you get one, right? We got a 12 team playoff. You get one. We dropped to 7. That's okay. I thought we would drop further. Totally fine. We assumed that after that embarrassment, it would be like the Bama of old that comes back and you're like, gosh, I feel so bad for the team that has to play them now because it's just going to be a bloodbath. It was not. And there's a couple things that I think stood out to me. The first being, I have a lot of issues, and I did after the Vanderbilt game as well, with Kane Womack, who is our defensive coordinator. We know that I am not particularly kind to our coordinators. I have very high expectations of them, but we saw it in the Vanderbilt game where we did not make adjustments at halftime. We just did not. And we saw it again in this game, and it's very, very frustrating. Look, I understand that we have really young guys on defense. I get it. I understand that our secondary is mostly freshmen. Totally understand. But for us to keep continually seeing things and not making adjustments and being poorly coached on defense makes me so mad. We should have been blitzing 75% of the time, if not more than that. We should have been stacking the box, and we were not. We've got like 3 to 4 guys in the box. That's it. You want to know what South Carolina did? They stacked the box every single time. They got pressure, and we could not get pressure. And then at the end, we decide, oh, maybe we should do something. Maybe we should blitz. Duh. And that's when we saw like some mild success. The scheme is not the problem here. The play calling is the problem. I have an issue with our defensive coordinator, and I need him to get it together really, really quickly. Again, I understand there's young guys, but that doesn't matter because you have a 17-year-old out there making crazy catches. So age is not necessarily the thing when you are not calling the proper plays. I'm upset. The second one, let's talk about this interception. Let's talk about it really quick, because I think
the one at the very end.
The very end.
Okay, yeah.
We're watching it, and you're like, "What is he? There's indecision. What's happening?" So his momentum, right when he caught it, is Jackson's momentum is carrying him into the end zone.
Was it?
We know that, but it was very close, right? Where the officials could have said that he caught it in the end zone. Right. We've seen some weird stuff from the officials before.
That's the scary thing, is because it's kind of open to interpretation. Was he? Maybe, but what would they have interpreted it as? So, which
carried him into the end zone, should have meant that he could knee it and it touched back, game over, right? But he checked with the ref, like you can kind of see him like looking, and the ref did not give him the nod of like, you're good. You're fine.
While the play is going on.
While the play is going on. So instead of leaving it up to the official to make God knows what call, that could have resulted in a safety, and tied the game and given me further heart palpitations and more mental illness than I probably already have, he got out of the end zone. Thank God. So
it's just another layer of madness on top of all the other madness that was going on.
The team, I think we saw it in the Georgia game. I mean, despite winning it, we saw it at the end of the second half of the Georgia game. We saw it against Vandy, and we saw it in this game. We do not, it seems, have the ability to just step on a throat and continue to take the air out of people. It's like we get a little pressure and then we just kind of fall back, or we just don't get pressure at all. That, to me, there's just no excuse with the amount of talent that we have on this team. That's what's frustrating. If we didn't have talent, fine. I get it. People start to get competitive. If we were playing a South Carolina team that I thought had lights out talent, sure, I get it. If I thought they had a coach that was like amazing, fine. But to me, it
Matt
boils
held it
down
together beautifully there.
I'm biding my time.
But to me, I think it boils down more to our coaching. And this is not, I'm not trying to be like, oh, the days of old Nick Saban, right? But obviously there is a standard with Alabama. And we knew if you accept that job, you're going to get that standard being held over you regardless. And in these moments where we needed to execute and we needed great play calling and just better coaching in general, I don't think our coaching staff is doing the job that they needed to do. And you kind of saw at the end of the half sequence, there was, disaster kind of playing out everywhere. I mean, we talk about that onside kick. 3 of our players touched that ball and none of us came up with it. It just was a comedy of errors at the end. And every time they pan over to Kalen DeBoer, he's cool as a cucumber. Everything's fine. Blah, 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 blah.
In his t-shirt.
In his t-shirt. And again, our coordinators are not making any different play calls. So it's just, and he's not chewing them out.
Right.
That is not good. That is not good. And then someone pointed out on Twitter, and I'll read you the tweet, which is really frustrating. So this person went back last week on the results of the last 3 years of Kalen DeBoer, including the first 5 games of this season at Alabama. He's coached in 22 one-score games in 46 games. You can chalk it up to being outclassed with talent, but that's not the case here. That's a concerning trend, right? And I got exponentially more frustrated with the result when they interviewed him at the end and he's smiling.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what? We were competitive. Our backs were against the wall and we were just able to pull it out. Absolutely not. Want to know why your backs were against the wall? You chose to walk towards the wall. Okay. That is so frustrating to me. And I think Alabama fans will feel the same across the board. Is we are used to so much discipline. We are used to enjoy your win in the moment, but we are our own harshest critics. And there again is such a high standard. The talent is there. And I want to see more emotion from my coach. I want to see frustration. You can't be these kids' friend. Okay. I think it's a lot like a parent, right? Where you're like, oh, well, they're my friend. Where I'm a teenager, they're my friend. So they let me do all these things. No, you have to be the parent. You have to be the coach. You have to be the bad guy sometimes. So yeah, they may not like you all the time, but I need to respect you and know that this program is going to trend where it needs to. Because right now, I don't have that confidence. I need to see you chewing out your coordinators. I need to see you chewing out players and making sure they're doing what they need to do. And I want to see you hammering in fundamentals that are clearly not there right now. So Kalen DeBoer is not my favorite person at the moment. And I get sometimes you want to see a cool cucumber. You want to see nice, duck, cool on the surface, hopefully paddling underneath. I want to see the splish splash from the paddles on the surface. And I'm not getting that right now. So that's where I'm at.
Also, really quick, Jesse, I think the people want to know if Kane Womack was an article of food, how would you measure that?
Oh my God, if he was an article of food right now, I'm thinking he is the leftover fettuccine Alfredo in a Tupperware that you put in the back of the fridge that you forgot about for a few weeks. And you're like, oh, I'm really hungry. What's in the back of the fridge? And you
Gosh, to
open
chip away the ice before you can even think about heating it up?
it's just a science project. It's just a science project.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is
Growing some
beyond even
penicillin.
that. Yeah.
he is just 2-week-old leftover
Oh,
past
yeah.
his due date fettuccine, and I'm so upset about it.
Matt, what were your thoughts on this game?
Back to life, back to reality, back to life, back to
Oh, man.
Okay, sorry. My brother used to sing that song when he'd wake me up to go to school at the end of summers. That son of a gun. Anyway, listen. What is happening? I have no idea what's happening right now with Alabama football. I am so confused. And in the cheerful, optimistic side of my brain, I think this is the final death knell of Alabama football. It's going to be back to the Mike DeBose, Mike Price era is what I'm hoping for, but I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, they may find a way to beat us this weekend. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I'm completely lost. I do want to spend a little bit of time really quickly because we do need to move on. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Carolina here. Carolina has found themselves in these situations so much over the last 2 seasons to find a way to win a ball game, and then they and Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry, they piss it away. And that's exactly what they did here. You can't have 4 turnovers against Bama and expect to win. You get rid of one of those, you probably win this ball game. Now, I know one of those was a heave into the end zone, yada, yada, whatever. But gracious, man. Beamer, I don't know what to make of either of these teams. They're so up and down. There's no consistency whatsoever. Both of these coaches, again, Jesse's voiced her frustrations with DeBoer, and I'm just like, Coach, where you at? Like, what's going on? Like, why do you look so calm? Are you taking Quaaludes? What's up? I mean, you are super, super calm when you should be freaking the freaking heck out. And it's just, it makes no sense. I am very confused. I hope that this Bama team shows up on Saturday against Tennessee, so Tennessee can beat them by 3 scores and I can have a nice, relaxing Saturday. I don't think that's going to happen, but one can hope. And I'm just trying to figure out where we're going. I have no idea. I'm lost. I have no clue. I don't know football anymore, apparently. The pick'em scores that we'll get to in a minute will demonstrate that as well. But, yeah, needless to say, great win by Bama? Question mark?
I know we talked, we joke a lot of times, and over the years of this show, we joke about, the SEC is drunk. Ha ha ha. We have no idea what's going on. I have never been more confused ever than I am right now as to who's good, who's not. I have no idea right now.
The SEC is super smashed off hurricanes right now. That's where it is. They are passed out in the gutter on Bourbon Street drunk. Yeah, that's where they're at.
There is one undefeated team in the SEC.
That's the only team that looks like they can beat anybody. That's one team. Usually we have at least 3 or 4. It makes no sense. Let's move on.
Speaking of that one team, number 1 Texas at number 18 Oklahoma in the Red River shootout / rivalry, whatever you want to call it. Texas won this one 34-3. Jesse gets the point here. Quinn Ewers returning from injury in this one. He looked extremely rusty in this one, but it helps that Oklahoma has basically 0 offense. And they were unable to put any further pressure on Texas. The fumble by Texas that went into the end zone, recovered by Bolden for the Texas touchdown, was just a brutal sequence of events if you're an OU fan. Then a turnover right after that, and the 43-yard touchdown run by Quintravion Wisner. It really felt like the turning point in the game as Texas just kind of cruised on from there. By the way, I truly don't know if it's Wisner or Wisner, because I heard 2 different guys on the air pronounce it 2 different ways. Anyways, let's move on. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways, Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, so here's the thing. I sat down and I watched the beginning of this game, and I thought for certain, I was like, okay, Oklahoma, I see you. It looked like we were about to have a competitive ball game, and then Texas got serious and just decided to put their foot down. Um, Texas, again, like you said, Quinn came out and looked a little rusty. He corrected that, though. He ended up having a pretty good day, 20 for 29 for 200 yards. He did throw a pick, but in his defense, it was in that first series, so it looked kind of iffy. Oklahoma continues to have lots of issues offensively. Hawkins is a heck of a talent. You can see that he can be a playmaker. The problem is he's not getting a lot of help from his running backs or from the play calling or from the wide receiver core. It's just a hot mess top to bottom. Oklahoma's longest play in this game was 15 yards. That's bad. When you're talking about chunk plays, and the college game is built on chunk plays. If your longest play is 15 yards, you've got a long afternoon ahead of you, and the Sooners did in this one. Texas, like we were just talking about, looks like it's the only team that's complete. Defense is solid, offense looks good, special teams is solid. Who's going to beat them? I don't know. I've got a suspicion that somebody might sneak up on them this weekend. We'll talk about that momentarily. But if we can find a way, somebody's going to have to beat them, or else they're going to run away with the SEC and be the number one seed going into the playoff. I don't think that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened.
Jesse, your thoughts on
Stranger
these?
things are happening. That's the thing. That's not the strangest thing that could happen. I think you guys pretty much covered it. I mean, Texas's offense is lights out, and Oklahoma's defense really just didn't have that much of an answer, and their offense certainly didn't help out there. So my OU fans, I hope you enjoyed the Texas State Fair. I hope you got some fried Oreos while you were there, because that might have been the only exciting thing.
Corn dog.
Your weekend.
Yeah. Corn dogs are mid. I've never understood the appeal of corn dogs.
I've never had the ones there. Supposedly they're
really good. And I can think of other breaded things I would rather have than a corn dog.
This is very true. All right, let's move to Mississippi State at number 5, Georgia. This was not a great one if you're a Georgia fan. Matt's that was.
I'm looking. I want an explanation, Wes.
That was my reaction too. So Georgia wins this one 41-31. Matt gets the point here. Georgia will just not allow me to enjoy a game. Okay. Even the ones that were supposed to dominate. Let's talk play calling, both good and bad. One thing in play calling that I didn't like was doing halfback tosses to Branson Robinson. Usually that's reserved for the more shifty guys. He's a bruising running back. By the way, he was having a great game in this one until he went down with another knee injury that did not look great, hoping for the best for him. All I've heard is that he'll be out this week with an MCL injury of some sort, but I don't really know the extent of that. As we are recording here, he's been through a lot with injury already, so hoping for the best there. For play calling, I do like. It seems like we've discovered that our strength is not between the tackles. It's in getting to the edges, quick passes to the outside in space, and letting those skill guys do the work with the methodical marches down the field. Hopefully this shows some maturity and growth by Mike Bobo. We really struggled to put the Mississippi State away like we should, though. Carson Beck had some issues in accuracy, as he's had a lot of this year, but overall he had a career day in pass yards and completions. But even that was really overshadowed by the fact that the defense just couldn't stop anybody. Honestly, our defense got torched in the secondary for much of the game. Defense couldn't stop. And then the penalties on a drive where Georgia's defense should have gotten off the field twice. And then we gave up some big runs as well. We made Michael Van Buren, who I'm not knocking, but that Mississippi State offense has struggled a lot. We made them look like a well-oiled machine by the time the game was over. So the pick by Beck as we were about to score a touchdown didn't help. It was essentially a 14-point swing in this game. He said that he thought that was blatant PI on that play. I don't know. I think that I have accepted that we just aren't as good this year. We certainly aren't the same Georgia team that we've seen the past 3 seasons. I hope they prove me wrong, but the picture that's been painted so far this year seems to be a significant drop off on both sides of the ball, really. So I don't know. What were y'all's thoughts? Jesse, let's start with you.
I mean, I feel like I was the meme from America's Next Top Model when Tyra Banks is talking to Tiffany. It was like, we were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And again, that's me as a Bama fan that grew up in Georgia, and I am who I am. Sorry. But that's got to be a little bit of an encouragement to Mississippi State fans who have not had very much to cheer about. Certainly disappointing that it didn't turn the way that they hoped it would have. But I think it shows some signs of life. It shows some signs of success for them. And it's obviously a concern for Georgia. I mean, again, yes, losing to Alabama at that time, you're losing to a top 4 team, but, and I can't talk, again, we've lost to an unranked team, but when you let Mississippi State hang in there, and you let them hang in there at home, it's certainly a cause for some concern. That's really my biggest takeaway here is I didn't think Mississippi State was going to stand a chance. And then they proved me a little bit wrong. So Bulldogs, Starkville Bulldogs, you may have some signs of life there. And that's encouraging. Hold on to that.
Matt? It's the theme of the episode.
Okay. I listen. If you're a UGA fan, and Wes, I know you are, or at least you claim to be. You have to be a little concerned. I know that the yards are there. I know that Carson Beck, aka Georgia Gollum. I know that I said that. I went there. Blow me up in the comments.
He looks just like
I
my
don't care.
brother with his helmet on.
Anyway, I know he had a career day. I get all that, but man, Georgia, what are you doing, baby? Like, you gave up 31 points to Mississippi State, whose offense, historically speaking, over the last, 2 seasons has been awful. And I'm talking a lot of crap tonight because I feel pretty good about the way things are as far as Tennessee goes. I'm probably about to eat a huge humble burger this weekend, but I don't know what's happened here with Georgia either. Carson Beck's up, down, left, right. One drive he'll look great. The next drive he'll throw 3 picks. It's a hot mess, top to bottom. Then you couple that with Mike Bobo's play calling, which Wes, you already touched on. It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. That's the theme for this season. Is if you expect it to be logical, it's not going to be logical. Kudos for Mississippi State making a game out of it, but gracious, somebody needs to step up and make some plays on that Georgia defense because they're getting run over left and right here.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't really know what to make of it, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, this upcoming weekend's offense in Texas is different from Mississippi State's. It's a different look for sure, and that's one thing that I'm kind of hoping works out better for us. But we'll see. All right, let's move to Florida at number 8, Tennessee. Tennessee winning this one 23-17 in overtime. I got the point here. So Matt, I watched this game with a Tennessee fan, and I am curious to know your thoughts and to see if you kind of line up. I want to go ahead and get to you and see what you're thinking about this one.
Okay, so I didn't have a chance to watch this because I was on my way to Atlanta because I had a family thing we had to go to. But I listened to it on the radio, and I will be completely clear. I will be 100% honest. I turned this thing off.
Oh.
Probably midway through the first quarter. I turned it off. I turned off the thing. I was like, I'm not listening to this anymore. And I waited about 3-4 minutes, and then I turned it back on. And then Tennessee screwed something else up. I turned it off again with nothing but hate and vitriol in my heart and said, no, I'm not listening. And then I waited 3 or 4 minutes, and I turned it back on. And then we got out of the car. So I listened to the whole first half of this game. This game was frustrating with a capital F-U. It was incredibly frustrating. I was convinced Tennessee was going to lay an egg. However, They found a way to win. When we got done with the stuff that we were doing, I checked the score, and Florida was driving on that fourth quarter comeback, and I was like, "Here it comes! Florida's going to find a way to win this thing." They tie it up, and I'm like, there it goes. And then I pulled it up and listened to it when we were driving to where we were going next. And I was like, all right, here we go in overtime. Tennessee's going to find a way historically. They always do. They find ways to lose games like this. It's just the way it's always been. Well, not always, but within the last 15 years or so. Offensive line struggled with pass blocking. Execution looked a little rough, especially in that first half. Nico is showing that he's a freshman. There are a number of things that are kind of off the mix. And then in overtime, you get a big penalty against Florida for a false start on the first play. The defense locks it down. The kick goes wide right. Tennessee has a chance. Dylan Sampson, who is a beast in every way, shape, form, or fashion, finds a way to get into the end zone in overtime, not once, but twice, because the first one he scored as well. I don't care what the refs say. He scored twice. And Tennessee finds a way to win this ball game. Kudos to Florida for making it a hard game. I was elated that Tennessee found a way to win this game, and I feel like if we can get just a couple more things to line up properly, if the execution can get just a hair bit cleaner, if the defense can get a couple more stops here and there, and if Dylan Sampson can stay healthy, we're going to be in fine shape. There were people all over Vol Twitter, and again, Vol Twitter, listen to me. I know we've been having this conversation a lot. Y'all need to chill the hell out, because y'all keep jumping all over Heupel about, well, he's not opening up the playbook, and what are we doing? And blah, blah, blah. Just relax. We're fine. We have one loss to an Arkansas team we should have beat. It's okay. You can lose one or two. You can still find a way into the playoff. We can still compete for the SEC championship. Shut the hell up and let's play some football. I'm fine with it. I was glad we won. That's only the second time I think within the last 50 years that Tennessee has beaten Florida in back-to-back games in Neyland. Because typically we don't beat Florida. There's been two coaches in Tennessee's history that has beaten Florida in consecutive matchups in that direction. That is Josh Heupel, and that is Robert friggin' Neyland, who the stadium's named after. We're fine. Everybody calm the hell down. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. Also, unfortunately, in this game, Graham Mertz suffered a torn ACL, which will end his college career. So from now on, it'll be DJ Lagway for Florida this season.
Which I'm not convinced is going to be good for them this weekend. We'll talk about that later too.
Yeah. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this one was wild to watch as someone who's not a fan of either team. It was crazy to watch. I did not expect Florida to hang in there. I think that's good for them. Good for them for showing life at a time where I did not know that they would have any. I do think that if Mertz stays in the game, I don't know that this goes to overtime, and I don't know that Tennessee wins. We won't know, obviously, because that didn't happen. But we started to see a Florida team come together. That's not going to save Billy Napier's job, but it was exciting to watch. And as you were talking to Vol Twitter, just reminding Vol Twitter, there is only one undefeated team in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one. Mm-hmm. There's a 12-team playoff.
100%.
The fact that there will be so many programs in there with one loss, so many. Who knows if there will be any programs undefeated?
There may not be.
May not be.
And Jesse, to build off that point too, someone on Vol Twitter, a sage mind, if you will, someone who actually has a little bit of life experience, made the point that if you go back and watch the games from the 98 season, which I know was 1,000 years ago, but it was the last time we won the national championship. If you go back and look at that season, every one of those games, Tennessee was in the mix. Like, that was not blow them out 42-14. That was a nail-biting grind, pull yourself by your own sort of bootstrap season. And that's the norm. I don't know where it's all Nick Saban's fault. All of this boils down to being Nick Saban's fault because this is all part of the Saban effect, trademark Pigskins and Pageantry 2024. It's all part of the Saban effect because 15, 20 years ago, everybody be like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool. We still won. Fantastic." But now, because of the crap that happened with Bama for a decade, and a half or 2,000 years or however long it was, everybody feels like in order to be a great team, you have to win every ball game by 3 scores. And that's
Which
not
is so
the reality.
funny because we won national championships having lost in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
I'm just throwing that out there for any fan of any team. You
Happened to
can
Georgia
win a
too.
natty and have a loss.
Yeah.
It happens more often than not, actually.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the point too, is you don't want to be playing your best football at the beginning of the season. You want to get progressively better through the entire season. You want to be playing your best football at the end of the season when everything friggin' matters.
Yeah.
Yep.
If
And
you lose in week 4, okay, that sucks. But with a 12-team playoff now, and with the way that the conference looks right now, one loss is not a death sentence.
Yep. And that 2019 LSU team, we'll talk about it later in our interview. That was a fluke. That's not going to happen again.
And that was a once in a generation thing. We probably will never see that again.
Nope.
Yeah. And I think with NIL and stuff, we're going to be seeing a lot less of dominant dynasty type teams because it's just going to be, each year is going to
Not
be.
mad at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be much more parity because everybody's going to be fighting to get those top players, and it's going to be changing, ever changing. All right, let's move to number 9, Ole Miss at number 13, LSU. LSU winning this one 29-26, right? Do I have that score right?
It's just
Yes.
I feel like that's not, is it?
Yes, because LSU scored in overtime with a walk-off touchdowns, 29-26. That's right.
Okay.
It just feels
Ole
weird.
Miss kicked the field goal in overtime. It was 23-23 going in overtime. Ole Miss kicked the field
Yes.
goal.
All right. I
LSU with a walk-off
overthought that one.
touchdown.
I was like, did I typo that? Yeah, I overthought it.
You're
Anyways.
good, Wes.
Okay.
You're on fire as usual.
Okay. I thought this one was going to be and I think we even talked about it. I thought this was going to be an offensive slugfest, and it really ended up kind of being the exact opposite, with it being 17-13 Ole Miss going into halftime. Nussmeier had 2 picks, but then caught fire, especially late. And the last 2 snaps that he took were touchdowns. The last 2 snaps. The first one to Aaron Anderson for 23 yards to score the touchdown that would tie it up with 27 seconds left in regulation. And then the last one to Kyron Lacey for 25 yards to win the game in overtime. So on the flip side, Ole Miss just not able to find enough offense when it mattered in this one. So kudos to LSU for getting it done. I forget who's Matt. What did you think about this one?
Well, look at you, LSU. You go on with your bad self. We were convinced that I was pretty confident that Ole Miss was going to find a way to win this ball game. But LSU hung tough here. I mean, LSU came out firing in that second half. This was a really fun game to watch as an outsider. I had a chance to kind of go back and watch it earlier this week, and I was like, "Wow, this is just a slobber knocker," to quote good old JR. QBs were slinging the ball all over the place. Now, granted, there weren't a lot of touchdowns in this game, but boy, there were a lot of yards. I mean, between the two teams, you had what? I can't do math. 887 yards or 86 yards. That's a lot of yards. It was a good game. It was a lot of fun. My helmet sticker comes from this game. We'll talk about it in just a second. Nussmeier looks good. Jackson Dart looks good. It just so happened that LSU had the better hand that evening. So kudos to both teams. Both of them have a lot to still play for, so keep chugging.
Jesse?
Yeah, it was unfortunate that this one was happening at the same time as the Tennessee Florida game. It was like just channel switching back and forth, and they were nuts. Both of these games were just absolutely insane. I know we'll talk about it a little bit in our interview, but LSU surprised me. I absolutely thought that Ole Miss was going to come in there and be offensive lights out. Even in Death Valley, I didn't think it was going to matter, but this became just a slugfest in general. Like Matt said, I think there were a couple things from Ole Miss that I saw that were somewhat surprising, but also a little bit concerning, knowing that they do need to win the rest of their season in order to be in contention. So the first, I think, is early on, they left about 13 points on the board. So they start off first 3 possessions of the game. They drop a potential 80-yard touchdown, miss a 32-yard field goal, and then they turn over the ball on downs in LSU territory. That's 13 points just left there. And that's to start the game. Not great, kind of hard. You know, you got to capitalize, especially playing LSU. They're tough to play. It's tough to play in Death Valley. You've got to capitalize on every single opportunity. So that's one thing. I think their offense wasn't as efficient as it has been. You know, you have Jackson Dart, and he was doing great, but to me, it just didn't look like everybody was clicking as much as they normally are. That was a little bit, I think, on the shoulders of the offensive line. Dart was sacked 6 times in this game, which is a season high. So there's just not a lot of protection. They were getting a lot of pressure on him, which kudos to LSU for being able to do that, but also their offensive line needed to adjust. And I just don't think that they were doing that. And then we'll go back to one of my favorite kind of storylines to talk about is penalties. So Ole Miss was a season high 12 penalties for 110 yards. That was their 6th straight game of registering at least 8 penalties. It's not great. That's not great. You got to clean that up. You got to get more disciplined. I mean, it was everything from holding, false starts, just, you know, penalties in the defensive backfield. It's just, there's too much happening. You got to clean it up. And I think if you're able to get your offensive line in check, you're able to capitalize on every opportunity and not have as many penalties, you're able to win that game. But LSU fought really hard, and this was an amazing game to watch. It was super fun. So you still in contention. They're still there, but if I'm Ole Miss, I might be getting a little frustrated at this moment.
Yeah, for sure. That was a rough one. I mean, it's a great and a elating win, but if you're on the other side, man, that is just brutal. All right, Vanderbilt at Kentucky. Vandy winning this one 20-13. Nobody got the point here. A lot of people, including myself, said that Vanderbilt would stumble here, coming off a huge emotional win and just, you know, playing on the road in Lexington. But all they did was turn around with a business-like mindset and just keep plugging away with the game plan as usual. Diego Pavia with another great game, 2 touchdowns in the air and over 50 yards on the ground as well, and a very level-headed response that I did not expect. So Kentucky, Jesse, you want to talk about penalties? Kentucky didn't do themselves any favors in this one with over 100 yards in penalties in this game as well. So Jesse, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on Vanderbilt at Kentucky?
I love it. I love every moment of it because I need Vanderbilt to be lights out and I need them to look amazing. So selfishly, I'm in. I've bought in, anchor down, whatever we need to do. Please beat everybody else so we're less embarrassed. But in all seriousness, I think we talked about it. You mentioned it. Diego Pavia, it's insane. The offense that they're running is effective. It's working. And it's not something that we've seen from Vanderbilt. So it is, I think, surprising people. And you also mentioned it with Kentucky. Penalties are going to kill you every single time. 2 turnovers is going to kill you. So again, selfishly, I'm in on the Commodores, and this is working well for me.
Matt?
What is happening? What is happening? I'm very confused by everything. I know nothing about football anymore. I'm lost. I need a primer. I need a tutor. I need a list of how things are supposed to operate in this new SEC. Bringing in Texas and Oklahoma was a mistake. I see that now. I don't need Vanderbilt to be good. That does not need to happen. All of that being said, I love that Vanderbilt won? Question mark. Seeing them put some egg on Bama's face the other day was a lot of fun for me personally. Sorry, Jesse. But I just, if they find a way, if this is a team that didn't even win an SEC game last year,
Here,
2
last
years,
year.
yeah,
It's
like we're not that far from that. That only happened a couple of months ago, relatively. If they find a way to get to a decent bowl game, God forbid, if they find a way to get to 6 or 7 or 8 wins, if that happens, then Clark Lee had better win every national coach award ever, because that's the only way you can explain that. Diego Pavia needs to be in the Heisman contention. It's a useless piece of hardware to begin with, but if we're going to talk about somebody that deserves that recognition, Diego Pavia definitely deserves it.
100%.
He has looked really good the last couple weeks. I hope that he plays every game this way until Tennessee hopefully beats them in November. But man, just it's crazy what a difference a couple of weeks can make for Vanderbilt. And I don't know if you guys have been watching the SEC shorts videos, but every time Vanderbilt gets that little pimp walk going on, it's a lot of fun to watch. So I hope they keep it up too until they play Tennessee in November.
It's way too early to be asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you think that Clark Lee would ever use this as a springboard to a bigger job? But he is a Vandy guy. If they experienced great success there, do you think he would
Vandy
allow
would pay
that?
him out. Vandy hasn't had to pay a coach insane amounts of money. They have wealthy alumni, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody is buying in because they haven't seen this before.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can talk about James Franklin days, sure, but
But he didn't beat number one Bama.
one. They
That didn't
knocked
happen.
number one Alabama. That is insane for them. All those boosters are probably donating, and they will make sure that he stays. I don't think that happens. I think he stays at least a year.
And also, like that, when we were talking to Will the other day, he was talking, if there was any reservation by the AD about how much we should go in on athletics, just look at Broadway, the scene that was out there after the game and the excitement that generates for the university. I think that's enough right there. You gotta go all in on keeping this guy, I think. So anyways, didn't mean to get bogged down there, but I thought it might be a fun question. Finally, Mizzou at UMass. I'm not going to talk about this one. It was a snooze fest, 45-3 Mizzou. Do you guys have anything? Because if not, we're just going to.
I'm trying to figure out who scheduled Missouri at Massachusetts. When did that happen? Why did that happen?
I think they had a home and home. Because
why? No, hold on. Wait, no, wait, let me finish. Why are we spending money that could be used for 1,000 other things to send a mid-tier, I said that, mid-tier SEC team to Massachusetts to play one of the worst teams historically in the country? It makes no sense. Nothing makes sense. It's very ridiculous. And I
wanted to see the fall foliage.
I watched all of 23 seconds of this game, and then I said, no, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I moved.
There was no value added by watching this game on Saturday. To pick 'em points, Jesse's still in the lead with 27. I've got 24, and Matt has 14. Let's move to helmet stickers. Matt, who are your recipients for helmet stickers this week?
My helmet stickers, and it was kind of tough because there were about 4 or 5 different people that I was thinking about. But basically, I nailed it down to Kyron Lacey from LSU, 5 catches for 111 yards, including a touchdown, which was the game winner in that game against Ole Miss. His name got called a lot in this game, or his name, excuse me, got called a lot in this game. It was fun to watch Nussmeier throw to him. It seemed like he was catching everything that was in his direction. So kudos to him. He gets a helmet sticker. And then I want to be very clear about something. I try to be very objective. I try to play a very middle-of-the-road sort of situation here on Pigskins and Pageantry. But y'all can call me a homer. I don't care at all if you do. Flame me up in the comments. I don't give a rat's patoot because I'm giving my second helmet sticker to Dylan Sampson. 112 yards and 4 touchdowns. 4, because he scored twice in overtime. I don't care what the refs say. 3 touchdowns in that, including that nail in the coffin against Florida. He's the leading rusher in the SEC. The kid can flat out ball.
Jesse, your helmet stickers.
I'm only giving one because there was just too much ridiculosity happening this weekend. Just so much.
I like it.
So much ridiculosity happening this weekend that I refuse to give to. But I'm giving my one to Diego Pavia because he is literally the reason that if a coach is like, I don't want to buy in on the transfer portal. I'm looking at you, Coach Sweeney. He is the reason that, hello, it can be super effective when it's done right. We're talking about Vanderbilt that could have easily come into a hangover game. They had a huge win. They're on a high. They're going and playing at Kroger Field, and they take care of business. So yeah, if you had a question about whether or not your team could benefit from the transfer portal, this is Exhibit A.
And the disrespect to Vandy, who weren't even favored the week after they beat Bama.
Oh,
So,
I
you know, hey, I didn't.
but
pick
that
them,
just
so.
fuels it for them, I think.
Oh, 100%. All right, so mine too are, I'm going to give it to Carson Beck. I mean, I think career high in completions and passing yards. I'm going to have to give it to him. And then Nussmeier with the late touchdowns to win that big game against Ole Miss. So those are
West
my
is a
two.
QB simp. QB simp.
Yeah, it happens from time to time. So. All right, well let's go ahead and get into our interview with the first LSU fan we've ever had on the show, and let's go ahead and get into it. Well, we are so happy to have Mike from the LSU podcast Pot of Gold. That's GEAUXLD, as you might have guessed, on the show tonight. Mike, you are the first LSU fan that we've had as a guest on the show. We're thrilled to have you. Y'all are coming off a thrilling victory against Ole Miss. How's it going?
Yeah, very exciting. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, yeah, it's pot of gold and interesting spelling there, but I think everybody has been pretty acclimated to some of our lingo. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to represent LSU, especially right off of this really exciting victory. Absolutely. Feeling good.
Yeah, and since it's LSU, I would kind of be disappointed if it was spelled normally. So,
Well, we got it stolen from us, and I'm sure we'll get to that at some point when we
Okay,
discuss
yeah,
the origins of pot of gold. But a Notre Dame crew tried to take pot of gold, GOLD, said that we had it spelled incorrectly. So that was a fun conversation.
Typical Irish business
I'm
trying to
telling
steal
you.
something that rightfully belongs to the SEC.
That's
I'm
correct.
telling you. Well, let's just get right into the basics, Mike. So first off, how did you become an LSU fan?
Yeah, man. So growing up in South Louisiana, it's just part of the culture, right? All you know is LSU and the Saints. I grew up a little bit outside of New Orleans in a town called Mandeville. So, the Saints are right across the lake and 45 minutes down the highway is LSU. So you're kind of born and bred in it. Had a lot of family that attended the school. So as a kid, growing up, to be honest with you, was probably the early 90s was when, the baseball team really started their big run. And as a kid, I can remember just all the family events. It was just kind of background noise, right? It's always on. The team's winning games, baseball's having a good time. But I can remember in 97 in particular, we were having a big party and I was a kid playing in and out of the pool and we ran inside and everybody was huddled around the TV watching Florida versus LSU in 97 and we had that big upset. Florida was, I think they were ranked number one. And at the time, I didn't really understand the implications there. I didn't, get what was so important about that, but I knew I wanted to be a part of that excitement. It was kind of contagious. Started playing football when I was 10, a couple years later, and Nick Saban was hired at LSU when, in the year 2000. So to be new to the sport and starting to learn how to play football, having an elite coach down the road and kind of changing our program, it was all timing and a fun culture to be a part of. So ever since then, I don't think I've missed a single play. It's been one of those types of obsessions. So
Right.
that's kind of how it started.
Nice. I love that. So in terms of traditions, what are some LSU traditions that we should be aware of? Maybe both well known or maybe there's some obscure ones that we don't know about. What you got?
I think LSU as a whole is very obscure. But by definition, we're very different. And I think that's what I love about LSU in general is we don't really have specific traditions, right? It's not it's not like A&M where you've got specific songs. I mean, we can take a simple rap
Cult.
song. Right,
Cool.
right, right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I had one of the worst experiences of my life at the 7 overtime game at A&M.
Oh gosh, I
And
remember that. Yep.
I never want to deal with those people again. And that's going to answer one of your other questions later on.
Okay.
But
So glad it's not us.
no, no, no. You guys are, we'll get to that. No, but I think tradition wise, long story short, it's really the culture. I don't live in Louisiana anymore, and when I visit, right, when I move or when I go back home for the games, tailgating, everyone hears about LSU tailgates. It's more than just a fun time on a Saturday. It's really a taste of the culture. You've got all the good food, you're drinking all day if you're into that. It's like a Mardi Gras party, right? Every Saturday. And so it really encompasses that nostalgic feeling of home. And I think anybody from that area can say that that is tradition, is being able to go to those tailgates and experience that culture. I think on a more basic level, right, we can destroy some rap songs and put some vulgar lyrics into them, like STT. Um, you know,
Yep. Oh yeah, we're familiar.
you know what I'm talking about,
Familiar
TD,
with
right?
that one?
Yeah, I don't know how aggressive we can get on this show, so I just want to
Just
make
be yourself, man.
it.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, no, so it's those traditions there, and I think Charlie Hannegriff, right, post game, getting stuck in traffic and listening to Charlie on the way home, trying to get back to I-10 is always a very big tradition in my eyes. I think something unique to LSU though, and it's not really off topic. It's more of a tradition for us and for my friends and kind of the pot of gold crew is there's something about Louisiana where we kind of take ownership over the high school recruits and we follow it really, really in depth. It's because it's a small community and we're all involved with the upbringing, I guess you can say, of these kids. Like you start noticing them and understanding their names in eighth grade from down the highway, whatever the case may be, and you expect them to just be with your team. You expect them to be part of LSU. And as you grow up, you realize it's really not your decision, right? It's up to these kids to make the best move for them. And obviously, we all want them to stay home. But I think recruiting from an early level and fans being so in touch with junior high kids, it's kind of crazy to even think about. But I mean, Jakeem Stewart, the defensive end out of St. Aug that just transferred to Carr, we've been hearing about him for 5 years now. Leonard Fournette, we were talking about when he was in seventh grade. It obviously that happens across the country, but there's something about that ownership, quote unquote, which is kind of a flaw. But it's tradition amongst us to kind of get crazy about them.
Right.
You
Well, that's cool.
mentioned the food and the tailgating. And I actually had an experience with it, not in Tuscaloosa, not on our campus, but I worked freelance for the Football Bowl Association for 2 years, and I was still in school, but I got to go to Nashville to the Music City Bowl between LSU and Notre Dame. So
Oh
it
yeah.
was, I think it was 2015.
Yeah.
And got to do, the pregame press conferences, which now is kind of funny knowing that it was Brian Kelly for Notre
Yep.
Dame and then Les Miles for LSU. And now it's Brian Kelly for LSU. But I will say, as we're walking around and I was filming footage of the tailgates and asking people questions about why they tailgate, why they came to Nashville, we were there and the Notre Dame fans weren't as excited to talk to us. They didn't really welcome us into their tailgates. Again, we weren't representing Bama. We had nothing on branded. It was just, we're here for the Football Bowl Association. But I will say the LSU fans were like, come on in. Do you need a bowl? Here's some jambalaya. It's freezing outside. Yeah. What can we give you that's warm? And I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to be working. That smells amazing. This is going to take a hot 30-minute break.
Right.
And it was so good. And they were really, really kind. I did not say that I was a Bama grad at the time.
That's good.
But it was really cool to see how Louisiana culture in general was so infused in the LSU tailgates. Because right. I think it's like you mentioned, that is pretty unique, right? Where Alabama, sure, we have some Alabama state stuff in there, But I think given the really unique culture of Louisiana, seeing that ingrained in the school itself is a really neat thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when I was thinking about that answer, right, of just what is a tradition? It's hard to pinpoint that tradition, but I think that is a unique part of who we are, is that tailgating tradition, but it's more than just the food. It's the environment and the culture. And I think we have a little bit of a sense of wanting to be not accepted, but we want people to enjoy this because it's easy to kind of point and laugh at, South Louisiana people or, country people from Alabama, whatever the case may be, but give it a shot and experience that culture a little bit and go into that invitation and you're going to enjoy it. And so I think I got a taste of that as a kid. I never grew out of it, and so that's something that's kind of passed on. So yeah, I mean, we did a tailgating podcast one day, and it was kind of, come one, come all. We had a bunch of jambalaya there. We were giving out free jambalaya, obviously, and we had recruits that jumped on our show during the tailgate, and it was just kind of a welcoming environment. You don't really see that a lot. So yeah.
That's cool. Well, so obviously we've talked about the tailgates, but are there any like key like go-to spots on game day for LSU in terms of like restaurants, bars, etc.?
Yeah, man, that's funny that we follow that up with the tailgating conversation because a lot of other places that I've been to, it's really about the surrounding establishments, right? Like you're gonna have to hit up, whatever restaurant may be near campus, and that's really where it's popping. LSU, it's all about the tailgates. So there's
Okay.
really nothing that's going to compare to it. But if you had to, right? If I don't know anybody, and for whatever reason everybody's off today and they're not inviting me to these tailgates, which rarely happens. Obviously, walk-ons is kind of the staple. The original location there near
Right.
campus is always a great time. They have a ton of it's just a good vibe every time you go in there. And then Chimes, to be honest with you, on Highland, is a really fun spot as well. Those are two kind of hot spots if you don't want to be in the center of the tailgating environment the entire time. But you really can't go wrong anywhere out there.
Gotcha. We have a walk-ons about 5 minutes from my house. We've actually all three of us gotten together and watched the game there
We had a
and hung out.
preseason strategery meeting
Yes, we
at
did.
Walk-Ons this year, so
We sure
we're
did.
familiar with. I think I
Yeah.
Good
watched
spot.
one of the worst national championship games ever.
Oh,
At
well, it depends on
Walk-On.
your perspective.
Was
It
that
was
was
it was
that
an awful
LSU
game.
2011 versus Alabama?
No, it was
No, it was
Georgia TCU.
Georgia. God, it was boring.
Yeah,
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
I
Did
think
not enjoy the first round of that game. Was going to ask you about it.
that's right.
Do you guys happen to have, I know in Tuscaloosa, like we have yellow hammers. That's our drink. That's our beverage that's at a bar right off campus. And people make them all at the tailgates. Like you get the recipe and
Yeah.
that's the drink. Do you guys have one at LSU that's, your signature drink?
No, what's crazy is I think by the end of the day before kickoff, we are mixing everything. I don't really think there is a specific title to or a label to the drinks that we're going through. Um, with us, it's really, the Jello shots. There's a lot of people that have a fun time with Jello shots and really, make them purple and gold, and that's always the last minute deal as you're walking into the game, everybody passing them out. In the younger days, obviously, we were kegging beers and having a good time there. But I think there's a generation gap there where we start transitioning to a good bourbon day.
Mhm.
As far as mixing, yeah, it's whatever's on the table at that moment.
I hear you. All right, now Pot of Gold, the podcast. So how did that come about and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, man, wild story. So we actually started in 2017. Um, and we were going into that 2017 season. My co-host Brett discussed a podcast with me. He's like, "Hey, have you ever heard?" I never heard of podcasting. I didn't know what it was. And so he said, "It's something we can do just to hang out and touch base, whatever, and just." We like comedy, okay? And I don't know if y'all have listened to a lot of our podcasts or whatever, but we're very sarcastic. It's very dry. It's just we're having a good time,
I have
right?
taken a listener too, and yes, I got that vibe. So-
Yeah, and so it never was about sports. It was just going to be shooting the shit and just kind of bouncing off comedy style ideas, etc. And then we just decided, well, let's keep this going and start recording about what we both have in common, and that's LSU football. And we can do something during the season. And no one has done that yet. Like there was nothing out there for podcasts, specifically LSU football, unless it was, recorded on ESPN radio and put out in podcast form. There was no, grassroots garage band style guys in the back bedroom recording. And so we started doing that in 2017. We had a different partner with us who was our third member. He ended up moving the next year. And so it was just Brett and I for a while. I brought in my cousin as our quote unquote intern, and he kind of stuck for the past few years as a staple as number three. Um, but it really caught on. It caught fire because of a website that I won't name the name of the website, but you can very well guess it, I'm sure, as y'all are pretty plugged into the SEC. But someone started posting about us on that website, and they got extremely angry with that and banned any discussion of pot of gold. If that word popped on there, you were banned immediately.
Oh
But
gosh.
that just skyrocketed our views and our downloads. And so all of a sudden we're like, there's thousands of people listening to every episode every week. This is kind of crazy. It was because it was so new and it was a different style. It was a conversation, right? We weren't breaking news. We were breaking it down in fan perspective, and that was kind of new for people. So it really took.
Sounds familiar.
That's
Yeah.
right, right. Well, I mean, it was very exciting times, right? And it was fun. And then we kind of caught that bug, like, oh, we're going to do this for a living. And we thought that was possible. Hope, probably would have happened if it was a few years earlier that we would have jumped in, but life kind of has a way, and we all had lives to live. And so we didn't take a break during COVID, but when COVID hit, we definitely took a time out, went virtual. A couple of us had kids. I moved away. And so it kind of tailed off. And so when we came back, it was all virtual. We weren't in a studio anymore. And it was more about us just getting together and hanging out and touching base and making sure that the friend group stayed in touch. And we just decided, let's just hit record and get back into this. And if people want to listen, they can listen. And that's kind of where we are today. But there was a time in 2017, 2018, where we were having sponsors and we were brought on to a couple media outlets that wanted to promote us. And we just couldn't stick to any schedules. That was our downfall. We just were having fun with it, and people loved to listen to it, but we weren't consistent enough to make it a living. Um, it's been a really fun time. I think, I can count on two hands since 2017 the amount of times that we haven't actually gotten together, whether we recorded it or not. It's just natural for us. We used to have outlines and bulletin, breakdowns of what we're going to do, and now it's just let's get on and start chatting. And at some point, we're going to hit a flow and let's hit record and just kind of do it for another hour and a half. So, um, yeah, I think the peak was probably 2019 during the national championship run. We had
Oh man, what a
every
team.
it was incredible. It was the peak. It was everything that we had been waiting for. And so people just wanted to listen. So, we'd hit download, we'd record, and we put it out, and we had 40 to 50,000 downloads in a day. And it was just like clockwork. And so we couldn't keep that rolling. The team did not perform as well the next couple of years, and we took a big hiatus after COVID. And so we've never kind of gotten that back. But for a little while there, Pot of Gold was very, very popular amongst kind of like this underground LSU group. It was funny running into people being like, wait a minute, you guys are part of that show. And now they probably have no idea, but it's been fun. So I understand kind of y'all's element and how fun this can be. And when you randomly have those people reaching out for random interviews like this, it's always fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And sort of transitioning a little bit, we talked about players and you guys followed players and things like that. Who is your favorite LSU player, past or present?
I have to do two people here. I know you asked me for one, but
That's fine.
I gotta do two. I can do a defense and an offense. Tyrann Mathieu is by far my favorite defensive player. He was my favorite player until Joe Burrow came around. Um, But Tyrann Mathieu, coming from St. Aug, a kid that rolls in his freshman year. Um, Brett and I were actually at the opener against North Carolina being played in Georgia. Can't remember the exact year, but it was Tyrann Mathieu's freshman year, and we didn't know how to say his last name because it was spelled like Mateo, or we knew it was some kind of French, slang to it, and so we didn't want to butcher it, so we just did whatever we felt like. Who knew that it was just Matthew? Could have been that simple, but he was in there number 14 as a true freshman on kickoff in the first game of the season. And we're like, who the hell is this little guy, 14, Mateo, just flying around, knocking people's heads off? And then as the game progressed, he was blitzing off the edge. And I mean, out of the gates, the second he set foot on the field, he was making plays. He had an incredible freshman season, and then he, got the hand-me-down number 7 for his sophomore year. And then he eventually was up for the Heisman and all that good stuff. He was incredible. And then he got in trouble and, dabbled in some off the field issues. But, looking back, he really learned a lot through that. And he became, a stand-up guy in the NFL, and he's still playing today. And that's remarkable to watch his growth and development, not just as a player, but as a person. But yeah, just the excitement that Tyrann Mathieu brought to the stadium every week. I mean, he's the epitome of a playmaker. Exciting, energetic, just a ball of energy every single snap. So that was fun to watch. And then when Joe Burrow came, it was just the long-awaited quarterback that we finally were able to get. I think it was, I mean, years that we were just salivating over a quarterback. Like we were waiting, like all that's all we're missing, right? LSU has this great defense year in and year out. We have a stud running game, but man, we can't get a quarterback to save our life. Our quarterbacks are awful. We get Joe Burrow to transfer, and there was something about him that was different from the jump. Obviously, in 2018, he wasn't who he was in 2019, but you could see those flashes of just leadership and somebody that just had a little something different to him. And then when Joe Brady got a hold of him in 2019, it was game over with the weapons that he had around him, and it was almost automatic. It's something that I'm sure Alabama fans lived through quite a long time, where you just kind of feel as if you're going to walk into every game and you're very confident that you're going to dominate. And we had needed that for so long because as a kid, you kind of grew up in it. And then there was a big stall period where you were always just, a yard too short or a player too short. And then we finally put it together in 2019. And so it was a long awaited celebration, but it all centered around Joe Burrow. So he has to be my offensive favorite.
That
Nice.
team was a perfect storm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, even as a Bama fan, as much as I hated to admit it and hated to watch them stomp on us, it was amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, it was something, and I think we've talked about it on our show a couple of times. I don't think we'll ever see that again.
Right.
That team, it was different, and everything clicked perfectly at the right time. And even with our Bama teams that have gone undefeated and things like that, I just don't remember a team that was quite like that 2019 LSU team. There was just something different.
And to top it all off, you had the poster boy for LSU culture in Ed Orgeron at the helm.
You did.
Absolutely.
We miss Coach O. We always had a soft spot for Coach O on the podcast. He's definitely a friend of the podcast.
Yeah. It's funny. Coach O grew up, well, he didn't grow up where I'm from. He lived where I grew up when he started coaching for the Saints. And his kids went to school with my brother. And so when he was coaching at the Saints, we had met him and we knew him a little bit on a personal level before he made his way back to LSU eventually. Obviously, he have no idea who I am nowadays, but I never really looked at him as this mystique, like unapproachable, big time coach. He was always just he's a D-line coach. I mean, he was just a fun D-line coach that just loved football and loved LSU. And so I respect the hell out of him. Now, did he, at the end of the day, he got the taste of the gold there and was like, you know what, I made it and I'm out, right? I think there was a little bit of a lax of oversight in organization. And you could see that with the team for the next couple seasons was just like, what are we doing? Like, is anyone going to class? Is it like, what are we up to? Like 2019 was 2 years ago, guys. So I think it kind of got to the heads of that coaching staff, and they kind of just they did it right, and they kind of lived in it for a little bit too long. But can you really blame the guy?
Right. I felt the pain. You're talking about Tyrann Mathieu earlier, and I felt the pain of him at the 2011 SEC championship. I was there when he returned the punt for a touchdown in that game, and that was just a backbreaker.
Almost two of them. He was
Yeah.
dancing around on that second one too. Yeah, it was a
Hey,
great
listen,
play.
if we're going to tell horror stories about LSU players coming out of nowhere to kick you in the teeth, Rohan Davey still gives me the night sweats. Because him coming off the bench in 2001 in the SEC championship game and ruining Tennessee's season, keeping
Yeah.
us out of the national title. I still to this day am still really upset that happened.
Still one of the prettiest throwers of the football. I mean, just beautiful spiral, great quarterback, good guy. Really one of those first images that I remember just really downfield passing being a staple of our offense. It kind of started with Rohan. So yeah,
Right.
good call, man.
Well, we've talked about a lot of teams. Who would you consider to be LSU's biggest rival, and kind of give us your unfiltered thoughts on them?
I think this is a generational type of question for LSU. I
Yeah.
think LSU is a very unique school where we've you could have a different answer to this depending on when you grew up. For me, it's Alabama. And that is because one, I grew up thinking as a 10-year-old that Nick Saban was mine, right? And that he's from here. I didn't get the background context of where he had come from and all that good stuff. I was born into football by knowing LSU and Nick Saban. And so when we won the national championship, it was the first peak, right? And then you could see after he left Alabama, all of a sudden, it was the first time that I saw Alabama. I'm like, that's what we used to look like. And it was a very painful, like, realization that, oh, it's because of Nick. Like, this is not because we have fun colors and we've got sick athletes that are from the surrounding area. This is because we were organized, we were disciplined, and we executed on every level. And now Alabama is doing that. And growing up as a fan, like that hurt. It really pissed us off, right? And so watching that rise and watching the ascent of the greatest dynasty we've ever seen in college football history, and thinking, what if it could that have been us? And so I think during those Les Miles years where it was one versus two almost every year, and we were, back and forth for a little bit, and then Bama pulled away, and it's like we were just one or two plays away, but they kept executing better and getting the better players and really pulling away, and then our program regressed. And I think at that point, it made the rivalry very intense. And so for me, it is absolutely Alabama. There's a massive respect there. But they are, in my opinion, our biggest rival. I am giddy, right, when I see them lose, just because it's more of a revenge factor. You could ask some of my family members and they'd say Ole Miss or A&M, or A&M fans would say that about us. And so it's a question that's unique to LSU in the generation that you kind of grew up in.
Is
I
there any
think
legitimacy to the Arkansas and the whole what is it, the
The
boot and all
boat?
that?
No,
No.
not.
Woo! All the
No.
Archie fans just hit the floor.
No, man, I don't know. It's fun. I don't like how they changed up when we play them. I think it's more of a tradition of like end of the year, Thanksgiving time, we're playing Arkansas. It's a rival game, but it's not the biggest rivalry by any stretch. They'll throw in a trophy there just to kind of make sure people get, going away prize, but it's housed with us the majority of the time. So
Right. Nice. All
I
right. So
agree. I think because I started at Bama in 2011, so It was like we were
Yeah.
hitting that time of LSU Bama. And I was at the 1 versus 2 game. I was sitting in the student section. I have never exited a stadium as quickly as I exited the stadium that night and got across campus in record time back to my dorm because I was just miserable.
Yeah.
So miserable. And then obviously I felt better later. But I think, and I tell people this all the time, I live in Big Ten country right now. And I try to explain that no matter how bad LSU is, I feel like y'all play us so hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like that game is just going to be different because there is that rivalry. And honestly, I think a little bit of hatred there.
Yeah.
And so it makes it really exciting. LSU was always a ticket as a student that if you wanted to sell it, you were getting hundreds of dollars for it. And I think LSU fans travel so well, especially to Tuscaloosa. There's always purple and gold everywhere taking over our tailgates, but it has become, I think, a really special rivalry in the SEC. Obviously, we have Auburn in state. Georgia's kind of come up as a
Right.
rival, and LSU, of course, Tennessee. We'll get to that this week, but LSU certainly cemented themselves in our rivalry, I think, and you guys, you give us a run for our money. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, we do. And it's funny you bring that up because every year, especially when we have our down years, we're going through kind of our projections. You look at Bama and you're like, yeah, well, they've got Bryce Young, they've got Jalen Waddle, like, they've got all the guys, and we don't have that. But it's always, you never know. It's like an NFL game. It's any given Sunday. It just depends on, a lot of the other factors is what's going to determine the outcome of this game. It's not X's and O's or who's on the field either. It's what's the weather like? What's the record of Alabama at that time? Is it a night game? Is it at LSU? Who's the ref crew, right? I mean, I don't know. It's always, there's always other elements that go into the difference in that game. And so you're right. And I think it's the level of competition. I think they rise to it because it is a heated rivalry. Absolutely.
And you mentioned a night game and you mentioned where it's played. And I have to ask, because we talk about it all the time, playing in Death Valley is so hard, especially at night. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what makes Death Valley special and what makes it so damn hard for an opponent to come in there and pull out a win, because it seems like that is a huge factor when playing them.
It's haunted. We got voodoo in there. I think it's, I'm not kidding. I think there's something different about that place at night, and it could be something to do with the river or where it's at in the city. And it's a feeling. And I think everybody is on the same page, but I think you get the prime example because there's different levels to Tiger Stadium at night, right? And it depends on the type of season you're having. Are we doing really well out the gate and we become complacent and no one really cares? You're going to have people leaving at halftime. It's crazy. Like you'll see people, if we would have been undefeated going into this I wouldn't say this Ole Miss game, but there's been examples where people leave early for no reason, right? Because they're complacent, etc. You start off losing to USC and your season is now on the line from here on out. You blew it last year by not making the correct defensive hires and not having a pulse on defense and wasting away generational talent on that offense that we see in Louisiana, but it's tough to really get them all together at the right time when you're playing complementary football. And so this year is so crucial on preventing any of those errors. And so you have that tension, that buildup. And I think it's those moments when the season builds a lot of tension and you have an opponent coming into Tiger Stadium at night, especially when the fall is finally coming into South Louisiana, so mid to late October, you can actually get a full day of not passing out at 4 o'clock from the heat, from drinking all day. You have people energized into the stadium at night and they're ready to rock and roll all night long, and then have that tension build up. it's tough to beat that. And I think it's a mixture, it's a combination of those things. It's the team performing to their standard. And when that happens, the fans can really feel that, and they're excited to finally kind of overcome the hump and see what they have been dreaming for, etc. It's just everybody's all on the same page. The light situation, the LEDs, that's new for this season.
I heard you guys talking about that a little bit on your show.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where, it's kind of a get off my lawn, old grandpa, yelling at the clouds like we don't need these lights. And I don't care. It is what it is. I think to be honest, I think the stadium's too big. That's my opinion. I think I like a more intimate environment where the crowd is really on top of you. Now, when you pack it as a full house like you saw against Ole Miss and you stay the whole game and you're involved, absolutely. That huge, environment can become very oppressive. But I thought the lights we could have used, not that I'm the accountant or the manager of LSU's funds, but I felt like we had a lot of other areas where we could have improved the game day experience. I was completely wrong. That environment, I wasn't there, but I knew a lot of people that were. My brother was there sending me videos all night, and then just watching it on TV. Aaron Anderson's catch in the fourth quarter, to force overtime, that touchdown, seeing the lights start to flash there and having the camera below him kind of panning the stadium after he just scored that touchdown, it just looked beautiful. There was just something about that and all the lights flickering. It's like, okay, maybe this kind of cheese ball theatrics actually works when we're performing on the field and the team is actually, and the fans are actually engaged throughout the whole session. So I think it's a big mixture. There's a lot that goes into why it's so crazy. Alcohol plays a big part of that. I think the weather, the timing of that, and really the tension in the season.
Yeah, and after seeing so many of those wild finishes at night there, and it makes perfect sense when you say that it's haunted. I mean, it just makes total sense. So,
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to another fun one. And so here we are. Who is the best fan base that you've interacted with? And by contrast, who's the worst?
Yeah. The best fan base that I've ever been around is definitely Tennessee. I'm serious. I
Say it
love
louder for the kid in the back. We get a lot of flack from people.
I love Tennessee, and I actually took my bachelor trip up to Tennessee. We were staying in a cabin. It 12 dudes. We took a van and we stayed in a cabin up in Tennessee, and we went to the LSU Tennessee game at Tennessee. God, what year was that? 2017, maybe. It was like a monsoon game. I mean, it
Oh
rained like
God, y'all went to
crazy.
that
We
game?
went to that game, and it
It
was
was
a
raining
blast.
cats and dogs the entire time. And
Yeah.
I think y'all beat us by like 2 or 3 touchdowns. That was a bad game for us.
Yeah, you
Uh,
weren't that great, but we met some amazing people. And one of those guys is Big Orange Mac, who became a big friend of the program. He was buying us drinks. It was a good, like, welcoming environment. Um, I think both teams at the time were probably going through some growing pains, so we weren't really at each other's throats. It wasn't as if, you know, we've got some hardware to flash from the previous few years, and neither did Tennessee. So we were kind of feeling as if let's enjoy this different environment and let's meet these people. And they were very welcoming. We had a great time. The stadium was fun. The weather did move in and it was wild, but Big Orange Mac has been in touch with us since that game. And he was actually just destroyed on Barstool. He called into the Brandon Walker show and had a little segment
okay,
with him.
that was a bad idea.
Yeah, and he just
Talking to
destroyed
Brandon
him.
Walker is a great way to ruin your day.
Yeah.
Every time I see a tweet from him on Twitter, I'm just like, I don't want to hear what he has to say.
No, he blocked me. He blocked me because I was getting after him. It was too much. But I was defending Big Orange Mac, and that was a Tennessee fan that we met up there who was a great guy. We met all of his buddies, and it was fun. I got tired of the song, I'll be honest, after some time, and
That's understandable.
it was only because every bar we went into, every restaurant we went into, it just was played at nauseum. And then when you get in the stadium, you're like, oh, this is where it should be played, but it's nonstop all day. So by the end of it, I'm like, I'm over this. Everything else, class act, great time. Um, Also, Ole Miss is one of the worst ones. Okay. I want to throw that out there. I think that was the follow-up question.
Right, the
Who
worst.
is the
Yep.
worst fan base? It's a tie between Ole Miss and A&M. Ole Miss and A&M, to be honest with you, are the worst fans. They are both of them. They are the same people. They're except one's a cult in military outfits. That one's a cult military outfits, the other is daddy's money with the Bama bangs, but they can't go to Bama. Like there's something about Ole Miss fans that they don't pay attention to anything until they beat somebody, and then all of a sudden they're the best damn team on the block.
No, that
And
sounds like most Georgia fans I know.
Oh, come off
well,
it.
they've got some hardware
Wes,
back.
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
You're referring to bandwagon fans, my friend.
Yeah. A&M, on the other
They're the
hand,
same thing.
they're very much in the same boat. You know, they have something to defend. They've got a lot. They're beating their chest, but there's nothing in the cabinet. There's no hardware. There's no, like, what are you building? What are you basing this aggression off of? Like who are you? And I married into an Aggie family, so
Oh no.
so that's a little bit of an extra element there. So we go to some games. They come to the games with us when we're in town. Um, they're great, but going to those games with them and meeting their friends and the tailgates and being in a 7 overtime game by myself, walking out of that stadium, never again. Never
Okay.
again.
I could see that.
Vicious people.
Hmm.
Well, real quick.
I'm not over the description of Ole Miss.
I know. I love it.
That's my favorite quote
Spectacular.
ever.
By the way, somebody's gonna need to give me a primer on what Bama bangs are, because that's a new one on
Okay,
me.
okay.
We'll
You
talk
can-
about it off.
I think you
camera.
can
Yeah, I was
probably
gonna say I
visualize.
can
Yeah.
I can give you like a Bama player that is okay, we'll get
Yeah.
there.
Real quick before we move to the last question that I've got here, did you guys have anything for Mike?
I mean, I think several of my questions I already asked, but one I wanted to ask is on Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
Obviously, huge talent, didn't quite have the supporting cast around him. What are your thoughts on him? What did he need in order to, I mean, he is a generational talent there, but to really cement himself there? And how do you feel about what he's doing in the NFL right now? Because he is pretty damn lights out.
Yeah, what he needed was a defense. And we did not provide him we provided him the worst defense in the history of our school. And that's really a shame because the kid, he came in very raw. He had a lot of talent coming from Arizona State, but you could tell that he wasn't letting it rip. He wasn't confident in his abilities. He had the arm talent, but even as a fan, hearing that he transferred in and watching his tape, you're like, okay, he can move. He's very fast, but can he really manage a game when the game's on the line? Can he take control? Can he make the throws? Can he make the right decisions? And we didn't really see that for a while at LSU, especially his first year. It was first read, gone, right? And he did great. He used his legs, but we knew that there was a ceiling to that. Like you're not going to be able to sustain that type of play throughout an entire season and really capitalize on the amount of weapons that you have around you. As you probably remember, Kayshawn Booty was a very good receiver for us. And then Jaden came around and there was a little bit of a power struggle. He was in his head, like, I need the ball more. That culture was still kind of there. And Brian Kelly was trying to change that, right? And really become selfless. And I think Jaden had to develop that as well during his first year. And then I think Joe Sloan, the quarterback coach who's now the OC, is fantastic. I think he's got some development when it comes to play calling, right? He hasn't been an OC that long. I think he was an OC at La Tech for a small stint, but other than that, he's been a very, focused on quarterback development. His play calling's getting better, but his quarterback development is really great. And you can see that with Garrett Nussmeier. And you saw it with Jaden Daniels from year 1 to year 2. He was trusting himself. He was trusting his reads. He was risking it, right? And I think he was very afraid to risk an interception or make the wrong play because he's walking into this, incredible stadium, a great program, and he's got all this to live up to. He didn't want to make a mistake. I think Joe Sloan, Brian Kelly, whether people like it or not, he's got a track record of developing not just quarterbacks, but he really understands how to get the most out of them in the right times. And I think you saw that from Jaden Daniels in year two. We needed patience. It took time. I think if he would have had a defense, we would have been in the national championship last year. I think the offense was that potent that if we would have gotten a handful of stops, this team could have really done some damage. I think in the NFL, you're seeing that attention to detail and that focus translate. I mean, he goes into the office every day at 4 a.m. He was doing that at LSU. And so that was something different. It's like, okay, this kid cares, and he is utilizing this platform at LSU to absolutely catapult his career. And if he can put in the time, he will be able to start, moving in the right direction and taking strides into the next level. And that's what he did. And he's continued that preparation. He got his paycheck, but he wants more, right? He wants people to really respect his development and his processing skills. There's a cat on Twitter that is killing me right now. He's like some dude that breaks down NFL quarterbacks. He thinks he's this big NFL guru, and he's got it out for Jaden. And so I'm trolling him now because every week Jaden's just putting on, right? And he
He's
is
so
fascinating.
good.
This guy went on YouTube and made an entire tutorial about how Jaden Daniels will be a career backup. He's going to be a bust, and we should not be, wasting a first round pick on him. And I mean, and it's not a troll. Like, he's
I
dead
would
serious.
love to see his thoughts on Caleb Williams or Bryce Young for that matter. I mean, as much
He's
as
a
I love
Drake May
Bryce
guy.
at Alabama, he has not translated well at all.
No, no.
At
Most
all.
Bama quarterbacks don't, Jesse.
No, Tua Tagovailoa, hang up the cleats, baby, for the love of God.
But
You don't like
Tua's a
Tua?
different
I
story.
love Tua. I am so concerned for his health and for his
Yes.
brain.
Yes.
I just want
We,
him to
we want him
say,
to be able
I'm done.
to think for himself for the rest of his life. We need
I
him
mean,
Yeah.
to,
truly.
No, I know. That makes sense. I agree with you. But no, I'm excited to see Jaden performing at a high level. It's exciting. It's bizarro world to turn on the TV as an LSU fan and say, "Oh my God, we've got Joe Burrow versus Jaden Daniels, and those were our guys." Like,
Right.
Right?
it's wild.
Yeah.
But Nuss is playing well, and we've got the number one recruit in the country with Bryce Underwood as a quarterback coming in for this next season. So hopefully we can continue this trend, but you know how it goes.
Had quite a
It's not
string
always-
of
One,
good quarterbacks there. And
Yeah.
when
I have one more
Nussmeier came in
question.
that game against Georgia, the SEC
Oh yeah.
championship, and just lit it up, I thought this dude is going to be good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
My last question, and then I'll pass it to Matt, is you mentioned Brian Kelly and you mentioned whether people for better or for worse. I would love to hear your unfiltered thoughts on Brian Kelly.
Yeah. Brian Kelly he's an enigma. I think he's very easily it's easy to hate Brian Kelly. Like, he's somebody that, if you just put out a random picture of him on Twitter and took away his uniform or took away, that he's an LSU coach, people would be like, "Oh, this is just some angry politician." But I think, I liked Brian Kelly when he was at Cincinnati. Like, I was big into football coaching changes, right? Like, I still love that storyline in the offseason. And when Brian Kelly was in Cincinnati, um, I was trying to identify, I go crazy, right? I kind of do my own little projects, right? That's why we have a podcast. But I was trying to identify, like, who's the next up and coming coach, right? Like, who are some of these smaller schools that have, guys that have winning records, et cetera, that could be up for big promotions, whatever. Brian Kelly was somebody that I remember watching and being, okay, this guy, he's got it, right? His teams win. There's something about him that I like, that old school, discipline mindset. Um, I didn't think it would ever be like an LSU coach. I thought Notre Dame, Michigan, the typical, Big Ten style, old school football coach. So when it rolled around that we got Brian Kelly, um, my first thought was little too late. We kind of missed his prime. I think that Brian Kelly missed his prime of being at a school with fertile recruiting, like an LSU or another type of SEC team, or like a Michigan up in the Big Ten. I think there's so many limitations at Notre Dame to succeed. I think he got the most out of them in this modern generation, and I think he's discredited for that because of how he left. He is the all-time winningest coach from that school, and people forget that. I think Marcus Freeman's a really good coach as well. I think it's just all too new for him. I mean, this is his first head coaching job. He's doing a great job relative to that. I just think it's funny that they compare Brian Kelly to him at nonstop. But with that being said, the other side of the coin is this is what we needed from our program. It's not about Brian Kelly being, is this the best fit for LSU? It's the best guy to come in and fix the issues that we immediately saw after winning a national championship. The first thing he did was try to change a culture. He tried to instill, a checklist of class attendance. He put together all of these what we as fans would consider these phony little games or checkpoints, but like you had to buy in. And you saw a mass exodus of kids that at one point we were always scratching our heads like, yeah, he keeps getting in trouble but he's really good, right? Brian Kelly didn't care about any of that. He said, I don't care if this takes 5 years to scrap and rebuild a disciplined program and focusing on attention to detail because the kids are here, the fans are here, the program is here. You guys are just floundering in the wind here with trying to win off of talent alone. And the talent's not coming anymore, right? You get a handful of guys in each class, but we're not stacking them, top to bottom like Georgia or Alabama is, right? And so you have to change the perception of the program and be ahead of the game with NIL, be ahead of the game with putting players in the league. And I think he has developed that, the attention to detail and the little things mattering to everybody on the roster. Does he annoy a lot of people with some of his stubborn tendencies? Is he easy to joke about whenever he jumps on videos with players dancing and stuff? Absolutely, right? I mean, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy to have him as our coach. I think the trajectory of the program is absolutely where it needs to be, and it's a direct reflection of him. Could it have happened a little bit quicker? Yes. I think he made some bonehead mistakes when it came to coaching hires by not retaining Corey Raymond at DB as the DB coach immediately, as not getting Blake Baker to immediately become your DC out of the gates and letting him go to Missouri first whenever he was your linebacker coach. I mean, like there was a lot of those parts where he kind of made some bad moves there from a personnel coaching perspective, but his structure of the program, his disciplined approach, and identifying the issues and quickly pivoting and fixing it, I think he's done a good job of that, and we're in a good spot.
And I think one thing about Brian Kelly that everyone would love to know is who was the guy who was standing behind Brian Kelly on Saturday night who looks exactly like Brian Kelly?
I don't know. What are
Have you seen
talking
that?
about?
It was going around on TikTok and other things. There was a
I
dude
haven't seen
standing
it.
right behind Brian Kelly who looks like he
It was
could be his
copy
brother.
paste.
It was
Hold
like, yeah, it was a copy and paste of Brian
was-
Kelly standing behind him.
I'm
I
I
don't
think
know.
his son is there a lot, but was this an older
This
gentleman?
was
Yeah.
like his exact
I don't
age,
know if you can.
if not maybe a little bit
my
older, maybe. I'm
filter's
not sure.
my filter's messing it up, but
Oh God, I can't see it.
No, we
I
can
can't
only see
even-
Brian
We've
Kelly.
got the
Oh,
one. Where's the other one?
Brian.
It's just
there he is.
Oh, there
You
he
see
is.
him looking over his shoulder.
He's so
Ah!
selfish.
It's
That is
fading in
Brian
and out.
Kelly. That's a Brian Kelly.
It's
Hold on, let me
crazy.
just-
We'll have to.
You gotta, yeah, you'll have to like
guys have to send
screenshot
me
it and
that.
put it in the
Yeah,
chat.
I'll
or
send it to you
something.
later. We'll get to the bottom of this.
There's
So,
been so much
There it
content
is.
after this
There-
game.
There it is.
that guy.
Can
Yeah,
you see that?
I don't know who that is. I don't
that
know who
is,
that
is
is.
so wild. Everybody's like, who is
That's
the
one
guy
of his
behind?
cronies, man. Who
Yeah.
knows? He's got a lot of old bodyguards.
I hear you.
Doppelganger.
All right, so Mike, we know how you feel about this rivalry, but give us your predictions for LSU Arkansas this upcoming weekend.
Yeah. I think that it's always a close game. Arkansas always plays LSU very tough. Just like Jess alluded to with LSU playing Alabama. Doesn't matter what the year looks like. we play Alabama, top notch toe to toe. Arkansas does that with LSU a lot. Um, Coming off of a big victory, right? We could. This is a perfect trap game, right? I think you couldn't draw it up better. Um, and I think the following week on the road at A&M is another tough spot. So LSU's got 2 tough weeks ahead of them before we have to face Bama at home. Um, Ironically, and it's kind of crazy to say this, I feel more confident about beating Bama at home back at LSU than I do going 2-0 against Arkansas and A&M. And I'm uncomfortable with it. I can't call which game we're going to drop there, but I feel like we're due for a drop, some type of letdown. We're going to get bit. I I don't think it's this week though. And I think that if I had to bet, it would most likely be A&M. And I don't want people to get upset with me here as an LSU fan saying, but I'm just saying I speak in reality, right? I
Sure.
think that's a very strong possibility. Um, the one caveat to that is that what we saw from LSU's defense this past week was not a result of having a bye week. Like this is a group that has finally bought into what Baker has been implementing since he got here in the offseason. And you started to see the removal of our best player on defense, Harold Perkins, right? So he leaves with an injury. I think, and I'm not sitting here saying it helps us. What I'm sitting here saying is it creates opportunities for guys like Whit Weeks and Greg Penn and Swinson at defensive end to really play assignment football, where everything else before was about where can we make Perkins the most valuable. And now it's really not about Perkins, it's about the group as a whole. And you saw a young D line really opening gaps for these blitzers. And we're top 5 now in sacks across the league. It's because they're playing assignment driven football on defense. And then Major Burns, who I know you know all about Major as a Georgia transfer, but he's terrible. And all of a sudden, he's in the right place at the right time. He's causing havoc in the backfield. Like we found a spot for these guys, and now they're playing fast and they're playing free and they're not thinking and they're making plays. That is not a result of a week off. That is a result of turning the corner. So I don't see that going away. And so if LSU's defense can continue and build upon what they just did last week, I think we beat Arkansas. I think where the trouble occurs is offensively, you have to find a running game. You cannot live and die by having Nussmeier be this MVP every week. That's not going to work, right? The offensive line is tremendous, but they have really lacked a lot of solid performances from the running game. And so I think what I hope Brian Kelly and the crew don't look at is, hey, it's Arkansas. Let's work on developing our running game and then get too caught up in it if it's not working, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get a turnover, the crowd gets involved, and it gets lopsided. And now you're playing catch up, which we're very used to doing. But you're playing catch up on the road, and sooner or later you're not going to be able to win that way. It's not sustainable. So it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a battle, but I think at the end of the day, the turning of the corner of this LSU defense, I think hits at the right time, and we hold off Arkansas and win by a touchdown.
Okay. Well, that is just one of many exciting games this upcoming weekend. So I'm excited to watch it. Real quick,
Absolutely.
Mike, where can everybody find y'all on social media?
Yeah, so we are on Twitter at Pot of Gold. That's Pot of GEAUXLD, Pot of Gold. My Twitter is separate from the main account. It's at Gold Mike, gold spelled just like Pot of Gold. Um, we have fun on there. Obviously, we're a very sarcastic, dry, fun podcast. We don't take ourselves seriously. Just a couple clowns getting around and chatting about sports for about an hour every week. We are on YouTube. Same handle there. I think that's all we have now. I think we've gotten rid of everything else. So
Nice.
we appreciate the plugs and the time
Yeah.
spent here. It's been fun.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time out to come talk to us, and excited to watch these games this weekend too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Go Tigers.
Thanks.
Right.
All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Enjoyed talking to Mike, getting his perspective from the LSU
See,
side.
we can't all get along.
It is
And
possible.
I agree with him. There's some weird stuff that happens in Death Valley.
It makes so much sense now.
That place has got some
I-
Cajun voodoo around it. There's some weird
Absolutely.
things.
Haunted.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets over to Auburn and shows up in Auburn. But
We talked about
it's in
sacrificing
LSU full
sweater
time.
vests at Jordan Hare, but
Mhm.
LSU just has that authentic, it's been there a long time
Yeah.
stuff
Oh,
going on.
That's like well ingrained in the soil. It is there.
Yes.
By the way, have y'all ever been to Baton Rouge?
I have
I
not.
think you
refuse
have,
to go.
Hey, Jesse. Have you been,
I
Wes?
would not go as a student because I don't always accept the fact that I'm only 5'5", and sometimes I have the mouth of a man who's 6'5", and I can't back that up. So no, I don't go. And I've had friends that while we were in school did go and said that, unfortunately, Mike, I know like some fans can be very lovely, but sometimes the student section isn't as gracious. And it was not fun for us, especially if we won. So I did not go because I don't ever want to have to call my mom to bail me out of jail in another state.
The only reason why I
fair.
ask is because a buddy of mine from high school got married. He went to LSU. Wes, you remember Bo? You may know Bo. And when he got married, he was at LSU. So we were like, well, let's go out there. It's gonna be your wedding. Let's go take a look at things. So we drove around campus, and we're driving around campus. It's just regular college buildings. And you're like, well, where's the stadium? Then you go around a corner, and just in this field, it just kind of looms out of the ground, is Death Valley. And you're like, oh, there it is. And it just kind of, it's really strange. I don't know if maybe it was because I was young and I wasn't really aware of what was going on, but it just felt like it kind of rose out of the ground like a gravestone or something, and it was just there. And you're like, oh, this place is scary looking, man. It's like some Gothic cathedral or something. And it's an intimidating place. There was nobody there, and you're just like, I can see how this place could get rocking on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
I get it.
I just want to see Mike the Tiger. That's all.
Yeah. That's right.
He was in his enclosure when we drove by. I did see him. Well,
I do want
was
them
it
to get him a
Mike-
friend though.
Mike
I
the
feel like
seventh or something?
he's lonely. So
Mike
Ellen-
and Michelle. He should have a girlfriend.
Yeah, I feel like LSU, if you're listening, if you could raise some funds to get Mike a tiger friend, I think he would be happy.
We are committed to causes here at Pigskins and Pageantry, and we're holding to that one. So
We are all about the animals here.
exactly. Well, let's go ahead and get into predictions for this upcoming week.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Matt's already given up trying to make sense of it all. So
Listen, I'm not even trying anymore. I'm just going off the sheer lulls.
you've rolled
I
dice
can't even go off
so
the
far.
vibes anymore. The vibes are off. I don't even
The
know.
vibes are
The vibes
definitely
are off. Let's start with Auburn, 2-4, 0-3 in the SEC at number 19. Missouri 5-1, 1-1 in the SEC. That is noon on ESPN. I mean, well, you can't say that Missouri struggling against Vandy is bad anymore. So, but I still don't really believe in the MIZ this year. I think we've discussed that at length. I think at home Auburn would win this one, but on the road might be difficult for them. So it's tough, but I'm going to go Missouri here, 27-21. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe in Missouri because I think they have the easiest schedule ever. But I believe less in Auburn. So I am going to pick the Mizzou Tigers. And I'm going to pick them 31-17.
Matt?
If Auburn had a quarterback and the ability to score touchdowns, I feel like they'd have a better chance here, but they don't have one. And I'm also still gonna sit on the concept that Missouri is the very definition of mid, and they play a soft rear end schedule. So I'm thinking this will be a late touchdown to give Missouri the win, 21-14.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, Peyton Thorne is a great quarterback, but he's just always, I mean, he's gonna, pad a lot of stats, but he's gonna have that one or two like really bad picks that just come back to him.
At the absolute worst time too.
Yeah. All right, let's move to South Carolina, 3-3, 1-3 in the SEC at Oklahoma, 4-2, 1-2 in the SEC. That is 12:45 on the SEC network. I mean, look at last week. South Carolina's been right on the edge this year and nearly got that huge upset. I know this one is in Norman, but I just love that combo of Lenoris Sellers and Rocket Sanders. Oklahoma has struggled on offense, and even though Hawkins has made them better, I think it's just a lot to overcome, even against a team like South Carolina. So I'm going SC here, 24-21. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I think South Carolina is frustrated that they were not able to make the big upset against Bama, and they almost had it. It was in their grasp, and then it was taken away. So I think they're frustrated this week. I think they're going to go into Norman with some gusto, knowing that they had the opportunity to do that. I think Oklahoma might be frustrated coming off of a big loss to Texas. So I'm going to pick the Gamecocks in this one as well. I think it'll be a pretty close game, but I'm going to pick them 28-21.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
Give me Oklahoma. Give me Oklahoma. And I'm only saying that because I think SC is probably going to do that Jekyll and Hyde thing. Now, instead of being Jekyll like they were this weekend, they're going to be Hyde. Or flip that, excuse me. You knew what I was meant. The metaphor didn't fly, but it's okay.
It works.
Listen, I think that SC is going to have some trouble getting the ball moving. I think the offense is going to struggle a bit. I think turnovers are going to continue to be an issue because Oklahoma's got a pretty solid defense now. Let's keep that in mind. So I think Oklahoma's going to find a way to win this ball game 14-10. That's an old school SEC score.
It is. It is. All right. Well, here we are at the third Saturday in October. Number 7, Alabama, 5-1, 2-1 in the SEC. At number 11, Tennessee, 5-1, 2-1 in the SEC. That's 3:30 on ABC. This one is so tough for me to even begin to pick. Both of these teams have had struggles and concerns. I think it's fair to say that both fan bases are a little bit worried, at least, about the current state of things right now. And I think Bama has a slight edge, but a home game in Neyland levels things a bit, I think. So, gosh, I'm going with my gut here. I'm going to pick Tennessee at home. Tennessee 31-28. Jesse, what do you got?
I hate this. I'm not buying my cigar ahead of time. If we win, I'll buy it then. But I don't want to be forced to look at a disappointment cigar. So I will not. I'm going to pick Bama in this one. Number 1, because I'm a homer. Number 2, because I refuse to let go of some positivity. And number 3, I am hoping that this past week, the AD and the boosters, and Nick Saban himself, have been making some calls to our coaching staff and threatening them within an inch of their life. I hope that turns some things around. And I'm going to hold on to that hope. This game is going to make me want to puke at least 3 times. And I'm going to pick the Tide in this one, 35-34. I could have picked it either way.
Yeah, Matt?
I would like to point out for the good of the order that Tennessee has not beaten Bama at home 2 years in a row, or 2 years consecutively, excuse me, since the 2004-2006 season. Now, Jesse, who was the head coach in 2004 and 2006?
At Tennessee?
No, at Bama.
Oh, no. Was it Shula?
You know where I'm going with this, right?
Stop.
Yep. It's going to happen again. Tennessee's going to win because Mike Shula was the head coach in 2004 and 2006, and Kalen DeBoer is Mike Shula version 2.0. So give me the balls.
In the name of Jesus.
You can rebuke it in the name of all the gods, both the old and the new. It doesn't make a difference. Vols win 28-24.
All right.
Just like literally, I have long sleeves on, but I got chills because that's just not fun.
I don't make the rules here, Jesse. I don't make the rules here. You're my friend, my colleague. I love you, but we can't be friends this weekend. You're just gonna have to take the L.
It's true. Jesse hasn't
Honestly,
said
at this
anything
point,
about
like,
garbage truck worker convention or anything.
I know,
We haven't got to the end yet. I knew it was coming
it's
in. Just
coming,
give it
it's
time.
coming, it's coming. But it's like
She did.
having
She did post it on her Instagram. I did
Oh,
see
that's
that.
true. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Having lost to Tennessee already and breaking that streak, it is easier. I don't want to do it, but it's like, okay, fine. But
I'm hoping they got that out of their system.
I hope they got it out of their system. Like, all right, we lost to Vandy. Okay, you almost lost to South Carolina. It's like,
Right. This is fine. Everything's fine.
everything's fine. That's how I feel right now. This is fine. Everything's fine.
All right, let's move to number 14, Texas A&M, 5-1, 3-0 in the SEC at Mississippi State, 1-5, 0-3 in the SEC, 4:15 on the SEC network. Mississippi State's quarterback Michael Van Buren looked really good against Georgia last week, and I think that'll help his confidence going into this one. But I think A&M is just on a roll right now, and Connor Wigman's going to continue to play well after his return, and that A&M defense is going to do a good job of stopping the Mississippi State version of the Bulldogs. I'm going A&M here, 31-21. Jesse?
I agree. I think Mississippi State showed some signs of life, but I just don't think it's enough to beat Texas A&M. So I'm going to go with the Aggies here, 34-28.
All right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't foresee Mississippi State being able to really hang here. A&M's shown that they can win football games. And I think Mississippi State's probably going to still be reeling a little bit from that game last week. I think it's going to be close-ish, but I still see that A&M wins 30-20.
All right. And then let's see. Next we have number 8 LSU, 5-1, 2-0 in the SEC at Arkansas, 4-2, 2-1 in the SEC. That is 7:00 on ESPN. We're set up to have so many games, good games this week, that this is just another one of those. We just heard from Mike. Now it's our turn to talk about it. First off, big win against Ole Miss last week for LSU, of course. We know sometimes those emotional wins can make focusing difficult the following week. Obviously, Vandy has figured out that mystery, apparently. I think LSU flirts with disaster here, but Nussmeier and company will prevail. And even though it sounds like Taylor Green is going to be able to start in this one, I think we'll see some of that inconsistency on offense for Arkansas. So I'm going LSU here, 28-24. Jesse, what do you got?
Yes, LSU just upset Ole Miss. And I get it. And it was wild to see. It was great for them. I just think Arkansas has had everybody's number this year. They've upset a few people. And I think that continues here. I really do, especially with it being in Fayetteville. Somehow Bobby Petrino being back in Fayetteville has just worked, which is weird. But I'm going to pick the Razorbacks in this one. I think it's going to be a really great game. I think it's going to be exciting and it's going to be very close, but I'm going to pick Arkansas 27-24.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
I like Jesse's pick. I like Jesse's logic. I think it makes sense. Hangover games are a thing. LSU coming off a big emotional win against Ole Miss, and I think Arkansas is that 4-2 record's not indicative of how good that Arkansas team is. They're a lot better than we've been giving them credit, and I think Arkansas finds a way to win this thing. But I'm going to say 28-26 for my score.
All right. Next, Ball State 2-4 at Vanderbilt 4-2. 7:00 on ESPN Plus. Vanderbilt just needs to be careful they don't sleepwalk into this one. But I think Clark Lee has just kind of shown us that this team's focused, and I don't think that happens. I'm going Vandy 42-17. Jesse, what do you got?
I think the Commodores are going to pack out their stadium with their own fans for the first time in a really long time. So I say anchor down Vandy 35-17.
All right, Matt.
Yeah, I like Vandy in this game too, but how crazy is it that Vandy's 4-2? Like really to wrap your brain around that. And by the way, if you're one of the pollsters that come out with the AP poll, shame on you for not ranking them. Shame on you. I hope you step on a Lego at about 2:00 in the morning when you get up to go pee. That being said, Vandy 35-14.
It's the worst pain. All right, let's move to Kentucky. 3-3, 1-3 in the SEC at Florida. 3-3, 1-2 in the SEC. That's 7:45 on the SEC network. Kentucky pulled off the win against Ole Miss on the road. And honestly, I think they can do it again in this one. So with that strong defense, another gutsy performance by Brock Vandegrift, I'm going Wildcats here, 21-17. Jesse?
Yeah, I think losing to Vanderbilt is going to be tough, and hopefully they bounce back in a way that Alabama did not. I would pick Florida in this one if Mertz were playing. I really do think that would have been a factor, especially coming off of a very hard-fought game against Tennessee. But unfortunately, with him hurt, I'm not as convinced, even though it is in the swamp. So I'm going to pick the Wildcats here in a close one, 24-21.
All right, Matt?
I was going back to look, but the last time that Kentucky, because this is just an interesting little fun fact for you. Oh no, I'm sorry. They're on a 3-game winning streak right now. Is Kentucky? They've beaten Florida the last 3 years, in 23, 22, and 21. Prior to that, this was not an even streak at all.
No.
That being said, I do kind of like Kentucky. This is going to be a nail biter. I think this is going to be close. Kentucky special teams needs to get their act together. There were several special teams miscues during the game this past weekend that were detrimental to their effort, needless to say. So I like Kentucky here, but it's going to be close, 28-27 Kentucky.
All right. And if you notice, we skipped one, and that is because it is the game of the week. And that's number 5, Georgia, 5-1, 3-1 in the SEC, at number 1, Texas, 6-0, 2-0 in the SEC. That's 7:30 on ABC. It's really hard for me to have confidence in this year's Georgia team after what I've seen so far. We've seen some improved play calling on offense last week, so that's good, but the defense really struggled. I know Ewers isn't the same type of quarterback as I mentioned earlier, and honestly, I hope we use that and really send some blitzes after him since he isn't quite as mobile. And Brady says that when Ewers is pressured, he's just okay. So I hope that we kind of exploit that a little bit here. We'll see. I think Georgia plays good enough to hang around in this one, but I think Texas is just a little bit better of a team this season. And it's also in Austin. By the way, this will be the first time Georgia has been to Austin since 1958. So it's been a minute. None of us were alive when that happened. So anyway, I unfortunately have to go with the Longhorns in this one. Just trying to be objective. I'm going Texas 31-28. Jesse, what do you got?
Georgia players, do not go to 6th Street before your game or after. Let's behave ourselves, gentlemen, okay? That's my first thing. I just wanted to put that out there so that we understand that there will be a lot of temptation, but let's behave
Most of
ourselves.
the struggles have been at home, honestly.
I know. So maybe get it out of your system. I don't know.
Or running into quarterbacks on the sideline.
Hey now.
But I think Georgia's been a little bit sus. I mean, they let a miss, and again, I know I'm a Bama fan.
A little bit.
Okay, don't come for me. All right, but letting Mississippi State hang around that much is a problem. And I think what Texas is going to do is they're going to look at that first half of the Alabama game, and they're going to light Georgia up on the edges because that's how to do it. That's how to make their defense falter. And I think even if Ewers is not doing what he needs to do, if he's getting too pressured, they could throw in Arch Manning at any point. He's proven himself, and he's a little bit more mobile than Ewers is. So I think Texas has the weapons to get this done. I think that they're going to start to expose Georgia, and Georgia's not going to be able to come back from it like they were with Bama. Texas is a much more disciplined team. When they put that pressure on, they continue to play with pressure, unlike the Crimson Tide. So I'm picking the Longhorns here in a good victory, 35-28.
All right, Matt, what you got?
Let's look at the tape. When you look at who Texas has played so far this season, and you look top to bottom, they've played Colorado State. They blew them out. They beat Michigan when Michigan was in the top 10 pretty soundly. But again, Michigan, you know where that's going. They blew out UTSA. They blew out UL Monroe. They beat Mississippi State, and then they just nuked Oklahoma. Here's the reason why I bring all that up. Texas has not been challenged this season. Georgia has their woes right now, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. I think Kirby Smart, in my heart of hearts, is a good football coach. I think Kirby Smart's going to take some of the things that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and I think he's going to find a way to motivate and fix some of the things that they need to fix. So, give me UGA in this game, in the upset, 38-34.
Matt, get out. Just get out right now.
I'm just saying.
It was the Lee Corso kiss of death. It's happened before. You can't do it.
Listen. This season has been freaking weird top to bottom.
Well, you're not wrong about that.
We have seen teams that were like, how did you win that game? You've been awful. You have been mid. You still found a way to beat somebody that you had no business beating. I think this is one of those cases. I think UGA is going to find a way to keep it close, and then they're going to pull away right at the tail end and get that last touchdown. I think that's going to be what's going to happen. Now, all of this is going to hinge on.
All he has is his football team right now to hold on. He's channeling everything into it.
I really think this is going to boil down to how Carson Beck plays, and if his wide receivers help him out. If that's something that happens, I like UGA's chances. If Beck comes in and throws picks, though, it's not going to be good. But I like UGA here, 38-30.
He's kind of shown himself to be a bit of a Brett Favre gunslinger this year, where it's kind of feast or famine.
Streaky, yeah, very streaky. And let's remember, I mean, this is not outside the realm of possibility because we've seen weirder things this year. Vanderbilt beat Bama, for God's sake.
Yeah. The first time in 60 tries beating a number one AP team. First time ever. So, yeah.
Crazy.
You never know. Hey, man, I hope you're right. We'll see. So let's.
I hope I'm wrong. What I really want to have happen is I want Texas to beat the crap out of UGA this weekend, and then I want Vanderbilt to find a way to pull off the upset and beat a second number one team in the season next week.
Okay.
I want that. I want the chaos. I want the craziness. Let me have it. Could you imagine? Could you imagine the sheer meltdown in college football if Texas lost to Vanderbilt next week?
Or just if Vandy ends up being legitimately good and is in the playoff in the SEC championship.
I can't imagine it because it's never happened in my lifetime.
You're talking about a 6-2 Vandy team at that point.
And one of those losses is out of conference.
Number one Alabama and number one Texas. Imagine that.
Yeah. It's wild.
We're heading to disaster. That's where
Nashville would burn to the ground.
As it should.
Oh gosh.
There goes your arboretum, Wes.
No, it'll survive.
So much kindling.
Yes, right. All right. Well, with that, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. So we appreciate everyone listening to us. If you'd like to hit us up on email, do so at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. We are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at PPSEC Podcast on X. We are available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, and most podcasting apps for iPhone, Android, and other operating systems. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and review. We'd love that 5 stars to give us greater visibility. We can have a better chance at talking with wonderful people like yourselves. Until next time, this is Wes. Go Dogs.
They low down, they dirty, and they some snitches. I love pumpkins, but that's that inside of a pumpkin puke orange you can't sit with. Let's close out Tennessee Hate Week with a win without giving me a heart attack. Roll Tide.
We don't give a damn about the whole state of Alabama, the whole state of Alabama, the whole state of Alabama. We don't give a damn about the whole state of Alabama. We're from Tennessee. Go Vols. Beat Bama.